So we go on to our last speaker now, which is Professor Nishant Sharma, IDC. He holds the Ramakrishna Bajaj Chair Professorship and is a Professor of Mobility and Vehicle Design at IDC School of Design. He instructs courses such as Design Thinking for Innovation, which is right now a new course for our undergraduate students, Vehicle Form and Aesthetics, Mobility Design, Computer-Aided Industrial Design, User-Centric Product Design, among others. Prior to his academic career, he enjoyed a successful tenure as a vehicle engineer with various automobile OEMs, including GM, Aprilia Motors, Bajaj Auto. His responsibilities encompassed creative design and CAS for two-wheelers, cars, vehicle accessories, and components. As principal investigator, Professor Nishant Sharma has secured funding from diverse government ministries such as MHRD, Railways, DST, and Ministry of Defense, as well as major corporations like Volvo, Samsung, Thermolab, Seat Tires, and Midmark India. Beyond his academic and research roles, Professor Sharma provides guidance and mentorship to build startups, nurturing an entrepreneurial spirit, particularly in the realm of design of special needs. So he will now talk on human-centric innovation, the creative design approach. Over to you, Nishant.
Thank you, Professor Bhandarkar. I think much of it has already been spoken about the human-centric design. Dr. Manish and Professor Narona has also widely covered this area. However, what probably separates me from the previous two talks is that we're going to talk about the creative design approach. I'm really delighted to be part of this wonderful celebration that we are doing today on the day of World Innovation and Creativity Day. The way things have really changed, there is a rapid pace of technological advancement, and there is a competitive nature of markets, and we have changing environment and the climate. We have economic shocks, we have societal dynamics, and the fast changing consumer preferences. It is probably all the more important that we look for some alternatives. Okay. And then the companies that have really started to look out for such kind of things or to gain the competitive advantages, they have started to innovate their strategies, they have started to innovate their products, and they have started to listen to their customers. And I think this is where probably design plays a very important role. The people who have started to listen to the customers and have shown some kind of agility and openness, they have started to believe that they are differentiating themselves from the rest of the crowd. And then in this whole scheme of things, I think the design thinking plays a very important role. And I'll try to explain what design thinking is. Essentially, design thinking places human needs and experiences before the innovation. Okay? And then it uses the creativity to solve the problems, right? And this is essentially in the nutshell, but I'll explain as we progress. By the way, this picture that you see on the right-hand side, this is a project that one of my students did. We react to the problems that are surrounding us. This is 2014 Kashmir floods, and this is a reaction of design school to come out with a solution that can help give rescue and relief to the flood affected people. So at the core of it, design thinking is a process that emulates how designers work, okay, and how they solve difficult problems. Now, design historically attempts to solve ill-defined problems, or we call it wicked problems. Like Professor Narona mentioned this word, wicked problems. Wicked problems are essentially the problems that may not have straightforward answer or a solution. It can also be multi-causal, and many a times it is also something which demands change in behavior of a human being. Now, all these things designers handle day in, day out. When you go and buy a car, the kind of response that you give to the market researcher, well, I want this car and I want that kind of feature and those kinds of things, and then there is something that I saw in my dream. So you essentially end up dealing with a lot of issues that are wicked in nature. So essentially, what is design thinking? Design thinking is all about having designer's tools with a designer's philosophy. Okay. Now, and this design, essentially, when we say design, it is not necessarily only for the product design. It also means that any kind of creative discipline. Then how do we know that what kind of thing designers do? Or in some sense, we say, how do designers really work? So what differentiates designers from many people who really solve the problems is that they delve both in the problem as well as the solution space. Okay, they empathize. Now this is a word which probably is an important word, and we relate with this word over the entire journey of the design and development process. So they understand and reframe the problem. Many times we look at the problem and then we assume that this is how the problem has to be solved. But when you empathize, when you really relate to the stories and the aspirations of the people, there is a change. There is a change in you, and then you actually challenge those assumptions. So they ideate and they make stuff. They evaluate, they rework. It's an important thing here. I mean, though it is a small word called rework, but that essentially tells you that it is an iterative process. So you have to constantly keep working on it till you really get the right answer. Then they reflect, and most importantly, they follow a process that is as important as a product. Okay. This was the tricycle for paraplegics which we designed, and right now this is in the process of giving it out a license to a company that will manufacture these. To understand really the process of design thinking, we need to understand two important cognitive approaches: the divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So in the divergent thinking, what essentially it does is that it promotes creativity. It talks about the qualitative nature of anything, and it explains the subjectivity. Whereas in the convergent thinking, we're talking about the rationality or the logical mind, and we are looking at the objectivity of it. What is interesting is that when you talk about design thinking, we really need both of them. In the problem solving, in this creative problem solving of anything, we need both of them. And we need the divergent and convergent. And if you see the shape of it, you will realize it looks like a diamond, right? Now that's what I'm going to carry forward in the next slide. We are going to talk about double diamond structure, which we use in the creative design process, right? But before we even say that, let's talk about context. And I'll pick from what Dr. Manish mentioned towards the end of his talk. He said that they developed the device, which is extremely useful in India. But when he spoke to his friends in the US, he realized that it didn't make much sense. So I think that's an important aspect here. What works in one context may not work in the another context. So innovation in one context may not be seen as an innovation in the other context. So therefore, the innovation has to be context sensitive. So it's all the more important to understand what is our context. And that is really, really important for all of us. So who are the users? What are they trying to do? And what product services are they using? And that's the primary thing for any design process to begin. If you have a problem, and if that problem has to reach a solution, we're essentially looking at two large phases of the process. The first is defining the problem. As I said, the designers actually handle both the problem phase and the solution phase. So if there are two large phases, the first phase will have the first diamond, which will have the divergent thinking and which will also have the convergent thinking, right? Now, in the divergent thinking, there is something called empathy. You need to empathize with large number of people, trying to really find out the pain points, trying to find out their needs and aspirations. Once you do that, then you need to define the problem. And that definition will lead you to something called problem statement. And then in the solution seeking again, we have another diamond which talks about the ideation. Again, you need to go divergent, which means you need to go creative. You need to go from concrete to abstract, and then again develop the models where you can converge your thought process and develop prototypes. And then prototype and test comes into the second phase of second part of the second diamond. Now this model is also known as 4Ds: discover, define, develop, and deliver. Now, and some of the techniques that we use in these different stages of the design thinking process. In empathy, we talk about observation and interviewing. In define, we have empathy map, persona, how might we statement. And then we have brainstorming, storyboarding, visualization in the ideation. And in the quick and dirty, in the prototype, we have the quick and dirty prototypes. We have mock-ups and the user testing. I would like to spend some time now on all of these stages for you to really get the glimpse of it. And while I'm drinking this water, I'm going to ask you one thing. What do you think who these guys are and what are they trying to do? Good answer. Anyone? I will not request Dr. Manish to say because he would know it. You gave the answer quite early. Absolutely. So this is, it was a good guess, but actually these are the patients who are in large numbers, around 300 to 400 patients every day. Not every day, they are there. You just go and you will find 300 to 400 patients who are outside the Tata Memorial Hospital. Interestingly, Tata Memorial reference came in all presentations today. That's so. But what we found interesting was that this problem was there, and nobody was seeming to having any kind of answer to this problem. Now, when we sort of delved a little bit into it, we found out that the problem is not just very straightforward. It's not just that they don't have a house. In fact, they are not homeless, by the way. They all have houses, but they are there. They're going to be here in this space for 3 to 4 or 5 months till the duration of this treatment. The patient is lying here and rest of them are the relatives. Now, what is interesting is that these guys, the patients need to be in the queue very early in the morning so that they get their turn at right time in the morning. So they have to sleep on the footpath. Some of them, and and the queue starts to build up at around 5:30. They need to be there. So which means they need to finish up all the morning chores and they have to be there. Now, why am I saying all this? I think because the moment we started to see these kinds of things, we realized that you don't have to really prepare yourself to be the empathy guy. It just happens. You need to be in that context. You need to be in that space. You need to really understand what's going on. Obviously, the answer is not straightforward. We do not know the clear answer because there could be some solutions that people would mention, oh, well, why don't we make a house for them, which could be, let's say, 50 or 60 kilometers away from Mumbai. But then I think as designers, as responsible citizens, we thought that, well, if this is going to be the situation and be it, why don't we really do something about it? Can we not at least protect them from rodents and cockroaches? And that's what we started to think about. So empathy is basically understanding and sharing the feeling of others. It contrasts with sympathy. Sympathy is just feeling sorry about it. You really empathize with the people. You wish to do something about it. That's the empathy. And then as I said, it's a first stage of divergent thinking. The focus is on understanding problems from the users and the stakeholders, from the stakeholders' perspectives. And tools like observational research and interviewing techniques. Well, in the state of art, Now, we have also moved to something called participatory design, where we really want to go even deeper into it. We want to look at the feelings and the dreams of the end users. But however, techniques like observational research and interviewing techniques, they work absolutely fantastic. And they develop with these we develop a profound understanding of the users and the stakeholders. But some of the other things that we do is that we also do the interviewing, as we mentioned, as I showed. But then interviewing has to happen in the context. It can't happen over a phone. I mean, if you're doing something which is related to what I showed outside Tata Memorial Hospital, or you're doing something for the craftsman, you can't pick up a call and make a discussion with somebody. You have to be in that context, and I'm sort of overemphasizing the idea of context because I think that's really important. And when you also realize that there are things which people are trying to tell you. I mean, this is in Noida. I went for a lecture and I saw this thing just outside on the street. The guy had a rickshaw and then he had put up the makeshift stall, and I found that fascinating. And it has all kinds of scanners and printers and laptops. Whatever you need, the person is going to give you. And I realized that there is so much information that is around us. It's just that we need to have the sense of observation that would really help us. Very recently, I also finished a course called Design Thinking for Innovation for 1,350 students, BTech students. And we taught them something called role playing. And I think it just opened them up. And that's an important, again, area. If you're designing something, if you're developing something, the quick way of empathizing with people is just role play. It really helps. Well, then you have a lot of data. You have interview data. You also have the observation data. What do you do with it? So you build insights. Insight is not the response. Insight is what you develop, what you make sense out of the data. It needs a lot of intellectual you need to intellectually delve into it and arrive at insight. One insight can change the fortune of a company, or for an organization. So the insights and key insights is what we sort of develop from the data, from the information that we gather from the users. And we essentially look at two important questions. The one is that what is the specific need that you want to satisfy of the user? Now that is a very difficult process. You remember I showed you divergent thinking and convergent. So need to converge on something which is one specific need that you want to satisfy. We did handle a lot of data. We did handle a lot of information. We want to focus on one thing which will bring a change in the life of the user. And what are the target users? Who are the target users that matter here? So for which we develop persona. We need to give a relatable character who represents the larger society. And we create a clear problem statement which essentially becomes a guiding beacon for the design process. And we need to eliminate as much as possible the ambiguity. And then we develop something called how might we statement. That's how typically we handle a lot of data. Whatever we gather, we sort of bring it onto the table, play with it. There's something called affinity analysis. So each of those elements, responses that we gather from users, they start to form clusters naturally based on their relationships with each other. And that's what is done. And then we create those insights and key insights. The third stage, which obviously IDC School of Design or any design school really famous for, is the creative ideation. I mean, we are trained to do that. But then what is important is that what to create and how to create. Just be a bullet in the dark otherwise. So it gives us very practical approach and focused approach. However, without hampering the creative nature of the design school, which is really important. So ideation again is a divergent thinking stage, and it allows us to generate large number of solutions, and we encourage students and also the project staff to come out with blue sky thinking. Now, blue sky thinking is out of box thinking. which probably is not relatable at this point of time with the solution, with the problem that you're doing. But maybe, if we don't think blue sky, probably will not be able to attack the problem which demands the solution. It will just be scratching the surface. So creativity is not only encouraged, we also celebrate creativity, and we challenge the assumptions and explore unconventional approaches. The primary tools that we do use, the sketching and modeling, which is probably the best tools available in the design schools and elsewhere. Then we also work on, if their teams are large, we break them up into a couple of teams, and then we do brainstorming and brain dumping. Now, the difference between brainstorming and brain dumping is that brainstorming happens within the group, and brain dumping can happen individually, where you sit and you make time-bound lots of sketches. And then we use a technique called Scamper. Scamper is an acronym for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse. So this gives a twist to all your problems or your solutions. So if you sort of substitute certain things of your product, you might want to see that what it turns out to be. And similarly, what do you want to adapt from the other products, and so on and so forth. I mean, the typical one funny example that I give to people on the put to another use is that in Delhi and also in Punjab, they use washing machine to make buttermilk. And I tell them that, look, that's funny because washing machine was never designed to make the buttermilk. But then I'm sure the conversations between the buttermilk makers would be that which washing machine would be better for that. And that's a completely confusing discussion for us. Because then we are talking about the washing machine that helps make them better buttermilk. It's completely bizarre, crazy, but I think that's how it is. But then they still do it, over last so many years. We also use something called biomimicry. Biomimicry is nothing but mimicking how the nature works and try to solve the problem. I have profound interest in it. No time today, but maybe any other opportunity later. In the creativity, we play with, as I said, with sketches and modeling, but we also give them very lo-fi, absolutely cheap products to arrive at the solutions. I was working for a tire company to solve some of those very extremely difficult problems of post-puncture performance of the tires. And I started to give them time, and they had a laughter. They said, we are in the business of making the best of the tubes and best of the tires. I said, just play with it. Let's have some fun, And I think they were able to now, come out with 4 patents fit. So that's the power of playing with absolutely lo-fi, simple products, rubber bands, balloons, and so on and so forth. Play with props, play with multiple things, play with technology, but that's whatever you think is required to come out with an idea, don't be hesitant in using any of those. There's also an image which tells multiple things. This was a project we did for Samsung many years back. And design ideation also demands very intense action with respect to the group. So you need to be in that space for continuous time. This one we did all the research of the users and all that. We almost kind of stayed in, this is the guest house, the Jal Vihar. We spent 3 days. We were only going to sleep in the evening. Rest of the time we were there. We just wanted to solve that problem there. And you need to build that intensity when you're coming out with creative ideation. It's a double-edged sword that you want to finish it on time, but also want to be creative. And you don't want to lose on any of those. So that's a very tightrope walk, but I think it works. What you do at the end of the ideation is that again come back to the convergent thinking, and you come out with the solutions that you think would be would be good enough to be taken for the next stage, which is going to be the evaluation. You have an idea, you want to represent it, you want to show it to the user and take the feedback. So it's the convergent thinking phase. Now, why we call it convergent? Because anything in design or in engineering, when we start to give specification to anything, this is when the prototyping happens. Till that time, it is only a fuzzy idea. So prototyping for me is a make or break for an innovation. Are you getting me? If you have an idea, you say that, oh well, I can do this, I can change it, I can make this product, as long as that can is replaced by I make it, you're not a designer, you're not an innovator. So it's an important that something is brought onto the table with some specifications, if I may say that, I would call it design specifications, so that it does not sound very engineering. When I say design specifications, good enough for us to understand that these are ergonomic and anthropometric, and with respect to the height and sizes and the dimensions and the experience of it, just good enough. It does not probably tell us that what kind of polymer and what kind of surface hardness and so on and so forth, not those specifications, but good enough for us to tell that this solution is believable and work. That's the kind of thing that we wish to do in the prototyping stage. And this helps us create tangible representations of the potential solutions. And these can range from low fidelity, absolutely low fidelity, which means some wire, something like this, which is absolutely low fidelity, very recently done by students, BTech students. And then we take them for the testing and validation. And it's an iterative process for refinement. The mantra here is that we need to fail fast and learn fast. We need to quickly move on to the next stage if it doesn't work. If it works, then we probably have to refine it. So it's a kind of very, very quickly iterated process. And we need to sort of, in the previous image we showed you a smaller scaled down model. We can make 1:1, and sometimes we make the almost fully functional prototype and take it for the testing. So last stage is the testing stage, where we provide prototypes for the feedback. And the goal is, of course, to obtain honest feedback for the refinement of product and services. Now, I'm using honest because you need to present this with honesty, and you also need to obtain the honest feedback, because then only we'll be able to come out with the right kind of solution. Now, this helps us assess the solution's effectiveness, and it helps us identify flaws, unintended consequences, and challenges. The more you show, the more you'll get the feedback from the users, and it helps us improve it continuously, and we learn from the failures. And we sort of take this journey towards the final solution, through the testing. Some more solutions. Now, I'm sort of towards the end of my slides, but I'm going to show you something very important here, is that if this is the process that you just saw, that we start with empathy and we go to define and ideate, prototype and test, essentially it never happens like this. I mean, though the journey has to be this direction, but many times we test a product and we come back to our drawing boards, because we realize that something very important we missed out, or some population of the users we have not really empathized with. We sort of go back. And that kind of flexibility is what is required in all of us, especially the ones who are doing the design work. And many times we ideate and we realize that, well, there's going to be a lot of money which is required for the testing phase, for making prototypes, because some prototypes would need a lot of money. Probably we'll just use you will jump from there and go for the test. Automotive design, where I come from, it essentially works quite a lot here. We make some ideas, we make some panels, take it to the users, because it's a very capital intensive industry. And many times from prototype to define. So it's not necessary that this is the pattern that all the companies would follow, but all I'm trying to emphasize is that it's completely iterative. It can just go back and forth, and we do multiple cycles. he'll be really happy with the solution. I think innovation deserves that kind of iteration, because if the problems are wicked, and as Professor Narona mentioned, if the problems are wicked and if the solution is known, then we can just pick the solution and give to that problem and say that, okay, that's done. But our experience is that the problems are so much wicked that the solutions need to be discovered. We need to and that discovery only happens if you really discover it through the empathy and try to understand the users well enough and arrive at the solutions and go back to the users. So that iterative path leads us to the discovery of such solution, and that's how the great innovations come about. As I said, very recently we finished. In fact, this Friday was the last exhibition of our BTech students, 1,350 students. They attended Design Thinking for Innovation course. First time such kind of course happened. It was exciting, challenging. 250 teams. Each team had 6 students, 8 different themes, and was very excited with the enthusiasm that students showed. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.